This is Dialogue, a podcast series from American Mosaic. I'm John Van Dyke, and I want you to join me on my journey around the country, having conversations with complete strangers that I meet along the way. It all started in early 2017. I woke up and realized that I did not recognize my country, and I felt a need to find out who we are today. Who are the American people? I ask questions about life, about family, about values, about work, about community. They're simple questions, and sometimes the answers are complex. It's who we are today. It's the fabric of the country, the people, and the places. I'm in Seattle, Washington, having a conversation with Laura. She's a professional in leading-edge tech, and we talked about a variety of things.
Here we are.
So we're on, so we can just
have a conversation.
We can have a conversation. So let's start with the background, with the roots, and I'm interested in where you're from and how you grew up in that environment, and a little bit about what brought you to where we are right now today.
So I'm from Michigan. My family's from Michigan. My father worked in the automotive industry, so he worked for Volkswagen, and moved us from the Detroit area when Volkswagen closed their plant, and wanted us to have sort of a safer life out in the country in northern Michigan. So at about age 6, we left the Detroit area and moved into the great north woods of northern Michigan to this little Polish logging village called Boyne Falls. And it literally is a village. It has a very, very small population. It's still a village today. And I don't know how much has changed there because I'm less in touch with it than maybe I should be. But yeah, so that was home. We grew up in the woods. We had acreage and sort of a pseudo farm, and our neighbors mostly farmed, and it was an interesting, difficult economic environment for people up there. A lot of families have been there from the roots of the logging folks, or had moved up there to get away from the cities or that kind of stuff. And among our neighbors on our street, we lived on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. We had, on our dirt road, there was like 6 households and 3 families, if you count clan-wise. And we had a party line phone in the late 80s. So for folks who are too young or too urban to know what a party line is, it's a phone line that everybody shares, and that each house has its own ringer. And if you pick up the phone, you can listen to other people's phone conversations. So that was the level of tech that I grew up with initially up in northern Michigan. And for my friends, their households were very dependent on their home gardens and on hunting and on cultivating and any livestock that they may have maintained to take care of what was difficult to get at the store or was hard to afford for them. So it was a very different place than many, but I think a very familiar place to many, especially right now. And now I live in Seattle, and that happened because I decided eventually to go to college, and decided to go to college in Philadelphia, and then didn't really enjoy college very much because I didn't see the point, and decided that I needed to go work for a living to decide if there was a reason to go to school. And I took care of developmentally disabled for a while, but while we were living in northern Michigan, the internet happened. And eventually the party line phone went away, and we got a normal phone line. And my dad bought our first real personal computer, which was one of the early IBMs, and he started dialing up to the university servers and introduced me to computers and how to move around the internet before the internet had browsers and pictures, and when the web was still dark. I was learning about how to move through the web when the web was still dark. And so I learned how to command line, which is using strings of code to find your way around at about 13, and then started to learn to code when I was 14, 15 years old. So in this background of a place that's far away from civilization, that didn't have a lot of technology, I had the opportunity through my geeky dad to learn about tech and be a part of the rise of the internet at some of its earliest stages. So things like UUNet, which were government networks and university networks, were starting to become publicly available if you knew how to contact them and you had a computer to do it. And you could put your phone on a baud modem and it made the evil screaming gerbil sound, and you could, have the internet. And so I came up through that, and I saw the introduction of browsers and was very confused, honestly. The first time I used a regular web browser where I clicked to get places, I thought it was the most boring thing in the world, because I knew how to get everywhere I needed to go and talk to people all over the world without having a browser or using a chat program like Instant Messenger, right? So I was doing that all in Unix for the early years of my life. But the most interesting changes that happened with that happened after we had the visual internet, when we had web browsers and America Online and all of those things. And while that was happening, I moved to Texas. So after I graduated from high school and decided college wasn't exactly for me, and worked a bunch of dead-end jobs, ended up falling in love and moving to Texas. And I loved Dallas. I thought Dallas was fantastic. And I needed a job, and I was working a couple of terrible retail jobs in the mall in Dallas, and I had sort of turned my back on technology at that time. I don't know why I soured on tech in my late teens, but I was just like, I don't want to have anything to do with technology. Nobody should tell me that I should be in tech. But then, I was making such bad money, and I was hustling my tail off just to make rent and have groceries and do that stuff. And it was right at the top of the .com excitement, right? So everybody was getting jobs in tech because they couldn't get enough bodies to fill seats to do things. So I ended up getting a job with MindSpring Networks in Dallas, taking phone calls and helping people use their email and fix problems. Because, the internet was flaky. Windows was weird, and maintaining connections was hard, and people's phone lines weren't great, and people were just starting to find excitement with being able to search for information in a way that they had never imagined before, and talk to their friends and family, and it was super exciting. So I get these really angry phone calls from people who are customers of MindSpring and eventually Earthlink. I came in right at that merger, but so I took all these phone calls, and I spent 10 hours a day every day talking on the phone with people about how to fix their computer problems. And always got in trouble because my numbers weren't where they were supposed to be, because I really cared about making sure people were fixed, right? So if they called and they talked to me and they were upset, they left feeling happy and understanding what was going on, because technology can be really hard to understand, and it's not getting easier to understand because it's getting more complex. So I loved that job. I didn't love the hours, and I didn't love the hard conversations. So anybody who calls up a call center and gives somebody a hard time, just remember, those are real people. Have a little compassion. They have stressful conversations all day, and you'll get a lot farther with being nice. Just saying. So one of the things that I noticed then, and it was a pivotal moment, like if we could take a step back and ask ourselves, what is, if there was one thing that changed the course of the world as we know it today, one thing in technology, it would be we clicked OK on something that we didn't understand what we were clicking OK on. And that OK was when we signed up for email, for free email. And when we started to sign up for early social media, we said it was okay in exchange for what we were getting from that product to just give them our behavioral data. Everything that we do with them, it's okay. Like, you keep that. That's yours in exchange for the value that you're giving me with this product that I'm using. And at that time it was okay because they weren't really collecting, they were collecting some data, but there wasn't a lot of sophistication about collecting that. And I think what's important for folks to understand, and what I didn't come to appreciate until much later in my career. So I've since, moved on from internet technical support. I'm in my 8th year of product management. I'm a principal product manager for a company that does artificial intelligence. And so I have a very different perspective about what our lives with our devices and what that data means. And so...
Explain to me product management in this context.
So my job as a product manager is to look at what a business needs to make money, right? So I'm a business person, and I look at giving a product service through the internet, and what does it mean to give that service in a way that's valuable to people, that they want to use it and pay for it, and that's valuable to a company to provide that service. And then there's a lot of questions that have to get asked about, well, how do we do that, right? And I work with the engineers to help understand, we have these business goals and we want to provide this value to people, and we want to validate that that's value people want, and then build it, and then offer it, and then put a business service around it, right? Including call centers with people in them who answer your phone calls in some cases, right? So that's my job. And so I'm always thinking about what's valuable to people and what's valuable to people in technology, and how do I see and how do my business leaders see what they're doing so that we can get better and better at giving people things that are valuable to them to use to solve problems that they have.
Question. So you were at the beginning of all of this stuff, and which was a very exciting time.
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. And it was kind of going off into the unknown, with everything was brand new, and it was going to change how we do things, but no one knew exactly how or what it was going to be. And today, we do. But how has this impacted the lives of ordinary people, do you think, today?
Well, a lot of ordinary people carry these every day. They're with them all the time. There's a smartphone, and even if your smartphone's not a big fancy smartphone, if it has Android or the Mac, the iOS, these types of phones, they feed us a lot of information. And the way that they feed us that information in a way that's relevant and important to us, and in a way that sells products, is they know how we behave. They know what matters to us. And so the upside of that is I get fed the news I'm interested in, I get fed the products that I'm interested in. I have the ability to search for anything I want, whenever I want to, and to learn about things that I want to learn about in the moment that I have a question about it, which is something unprecedented and unimaginable. 30 years ago, this was just not an idea, right? I mean, it was an idea, but it wasn't like this, right? But, when we clicked OK on having our behavioral data recorded, that's what ultimately enabled that type of personalization and that type of prediction and that type of understanding who people are and who people are in groups. So when we think of ourselves, we tend to think of ourselves in like racial terms or political terms or religious terms. We tribe ourselves in different ways. But imagine that today, and it's a real thing, our behavioral data allows those capable of looking at it and applying the math to it that lets it do stuff like that's ultimately like really complex statistics. But based on whatever question they have at the time, we can be put in new tribes of people based on the behaviors that they care about reaching us on, right? So I care about certain things, I look at certain things, I do it at certain times of the day, I shop for certain types of items. Anybody who's ever put anything in their Amazon cart that they never bought and then was stalked through Facebook for an ad, that's exactly that stuff, right? That's exactly that stuff. It also affects what news we see. It affects what's on our Facebook feed. It affects the conversations that we have. And going back to what I was saying about my job as a product manager is about finding the profitable connection point between the things that matter to other people and what they want to look at, what they want to interact with, what they want to buy, and us making money as a company, right? And I've worked for a lot of different companies. There are two goals, we call them metrics, but ultimately they're business goals. Two of the most important ones are engagement and retention, which is a fancy way of saying, are you involved with it? And are you paying it, like, do you repeatedly come back, right? And so what does that for different people is now pretty understandable in a big way, in a mathematical way, based on what type of behavioral result you want.
Okay. That's really cool stuff. And that is really great for the people collecting the information, and that is the business today.
Yes.
And how does that impact media today, where we get our things? If everything is so directed to you because of that is something, it's a personal preference. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting fed things, only things that you like, only things that you're interested in. As an example, very nice lady in Alabama. I was talking to her, and baby boomer. And she said, well, I've kind of cleaned up all my Facebook. I got rid of all these people over, so I'm safe there now. It's just people that agree with me, I agree with them. And then she said, I don't read these papers anymore, so I get my news and information from Facebook, and then, of course, I watch Fox News. There are a lot of people like that. Somebody else actually provides them information and actually is forming their opinions about things, because they're not forming their own opinions because they don't have diverse information anymore. There's kind of a problem with that. If we're just being fed on our feed.
Yeah, so you're bringing up a really important unintended consequence, which is very useful. So if we stay away from conspiracy theorizing, and we just talk about how we optimize as a capitalist democracy, right? Because money votes now, right? We gave corporations personhood, and we allow them to be citizens of the United States and vote with money. And money, I think a lot of folks, regardless of how you may feel about it, understand that that's a part of how our system works. And when you think about the optimizations that capitalism makes without being critical, right? We optimize on making money at the lowest cost possible. And so that's just how we do things, right? And if we go back to what I just mentioned, is that any business, and Facebook is a business, they're an advertising business. Just like Google is an advertising business. Ultimately, that's where they make those billions of dollars that folks hear about, right? And the way that they do that is that the people who use them are the product. And that's the big difference between 38, 40 years ago and now, is that we are the product. How we behave is the product. And our behavior, our digital behavior, is not our property. And the very fact that data is not our property here allows a lot of things. And some of the things that it allows, based on how folks who are optimizing to make money, they're going to optimize on how often you get in here and how long you stay. And the best way to make sure that people come back, we're very smart monkeys, but we're still got a lot of our animal brains, right? And as product people, we are trained to look at what's addictive, right? What elicits the strongest emotions? What involves people, right? What keeps them coming back? Why is this exciting? Why is this stimulating? Why do I need to check this over 200 times a day? Why am I in Facebook as soon as I wake up in the morning? Why am I in it more than 100 times a day? Well, because I'm stimulated by it. And some of the most powerful stimulating emotions we have as the type of smart monkey we are is anger, is fear. These are very addictive emotions. And that's and our industry has gone to the science, right? This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's just an optimization act. If you want consistency in people's attention and continued interaction, if you get people where it moves them the most, which is, what are you most afraid of? What makes you uncomfortable? What gets a rise out of you, right? And what has come to get a rise out of people is differences of opinion, right? So I have dear family back home in Michigan who are evangelical Christians. And they are my family, and I love them, right? I love them. They're my family. We don't agree about a lot. I'm out here in the blue bubble, and there's all kinds of criticism of us out here, right? But I go home, and I sit down to dinner, and we talk about really hard things, and we don't agree. Oh, golly, we do not agree. I'm a Buddhist. They're evangelical Christians, right? They're concerned for my well-being, and I appreciate the fact that they're concerned for my well-being. And we sit down to dinner and we talk. And the most important aspect of sitting down to that conversation is that we don't agree, but we are family. We are in this together, and that we put this down. Because when we curate the conversations that we have, so that we can either reduce our stress level and then always just be agreed with, we lose our ability to listen. The other thing that happens when we live inside this box is it feeds us the window to the world based on our taste and preferences, right? The things we like and what we want to buy and who we want to hear from, in a way that's optimized to keep our interaction and our attention as much as possible so that we can be sold things, sold ideas, sold products, because our behavior is not our property and it's used to help have that happen.
That's it for this episode of Dialogue from An American Mosaic.